All right, good evening, everybody, to our second most packed house of 2018. Thanks for coming, and I know it's quite a heck of a night out there, so thanks for coming out. We'll start with an approval of the minutes from our January meeting, please.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. And can we get an adoption of the agenda for tonight?
I'll move the adoption of the agenda tonight.
Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Any members in any conflict of interest tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to 5.1, which is our consent agenda. Can we get a motion to receive and file the letter from the Common Clerk's office?
So moved.
Seconder?
Second.
And moving on then to our presentation for tonight. So I believe, Mary, you're going to present, is that correct? Barry's going to? Okay. So Barry, as I understand, welcome, you're presenting on behalf of all 5 communities, correct? Okay. You have the floor.
And the slides, like who?
Do you want me to push them for you?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So thank you so much for allowing us to speak to you this evening. My name is Barry Galloway, and I'm the Executive Director of One Change. But tonight, I'm here to represent all of the 5 priority neighborhoods. And these neighborhoods, certainly, as we all know, are the neighborhoods in St. John with the highest concentration of poverty. And coming with that are a number of issues that certainly arise. And that's, not only historical, but also it's really statistically validated. The community policing, we know that it works in St. John. For 20 years, we've been working together as a community. We have identified needs together. Not just community identifying needs, it's all the stakeholders coming together. It is the community police, it's the city of St. John, it's Living St. John, it's all of the major players in our community, both business and residents and community, trying to decide what is best for our community. And
So would you mind standing up here? Just
Sure.
I want to give you my attention, but I don't want to miss what you have up here too.
alrighty.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So, so as I was saying, I'm going to share a quick story with you. With One Change, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but One Change came about because of a relationship that developed between residents and the community police. I mean, those were the 2 main parties. And of course, other parties became involved as well. But the crime rate in the Old North End at the time was so high, it was the highest in the city. And residents were tired of it. And they decided that they weren't going to put up with it anymore. And they worked with the police together. And that was the inception of One Change. And we've been around since 2002. So and we've become quite a robust organization. And now certainly the city allows us to run the Nick Nicole Community Center. And I think we're creating some change in our community. Well, that's not unique to the Old North End. That happened in all of the neighborhoods. Without community policing, we would be dealing with much more grave issues. And I just think, tonight we wanted to draw attention to that. We wanted you to realize the impact that community policing is having in the neighborhoods. And we wanted to really make a plea that this be continued in our neighborhoods because we don't want to go back down that rabbit hole again. It takes time, it takes effort, consistency to build trust and relationships in our neighborhoods. And having these dedicated resources allows us to work together on proactive solutions in crime prevention. Now I want to speak to trust relationships. This is how we create change everywhere we go. It's about building trust relationships. At the grassroots level in our neighborhood and in all of our neighborhoods, we have developed trust. Our residents come to us. In my neighborhood, we've had Constable McLean, Constable D was there for a while, and then Constable Whalen has just left us. But we've had incredible luck with community police officers. They've really engaged with residents. And what we have seen happen in all of our neighborhoods is kind of a shift. There was a level, I don't know if it was distrust, between police and community, but because of the intensive nature of our community police officers and their engagement of residents by being part of our neighborhoods, we've seen that change significantly. Residents came, like I hope everyone's okay. I'm going to speak a lot about my own neighborhood just because I know what happens there and I know what's happening in the other neighborhoods as well. But residents were coming directly to see our community police officer. Not just because of crime, but because of concerns in the neighborhood, because they were seeing a new drug dealer that has just moved back in, that just got out of jail, and they're coming and they're saying, okay, we're seeing an increased use of drugs in our neighborhood. This is the person, this is where they live, we need something done about it. Well, that would never have happened 10 years ago, but it does happen now. And we're quite concerned about the loss of our community policing. And in fact, since January, I was just talking to a couple of people outside, I'm seeing things happen already in our neighborhood. Things that are happening at our own center that I had not seen in the 2 years that I have been there. Have happened since January. And we don't have a community police officer anymore. And in fact, I have called the police, and yes, they've responded, and they've been great to work with, but they're coming in, strangers to our neighborhood. In fact, just recently, an officer was in who told me they had never been in our center before and weren't aware of the work that we were doing. Well, you need to be aware of the work that we're doing in order to create change and in order to work with us effectively. And we really, I can't express enough how important this is to our neighborhood. Relationships. Relationships are created when residents become engaged and feel a sense of ownership and pride. And to that end, our community police officers are quite engaged. They have been and actually continue to be, even though they're not community police officers anymore. They drop in now and then to just check and see how things are going, which is so encouraging for us. But they show up. In all of our communities, there's lots of different programs going on. And our police officers are part of that. They're part of committees. They're part of the discussions. So they're right at the grassroots with us. They're the first ones to hear when issues arise in our neighborhood, and they're the first ones to respond. And often they come in with a bit of a different tack. Because they're not living in the neighborhoods, they're able to look at it objectively, and because of the training that they've been through, they're able to convey things in a really great way sometimes to our residents in our neighborhoods. And it has built such an engagement, such a level of trust with our community policing. I mean, look at what has happened in Crescent Valley. We are a community that has welcomed newcomers to Canada. The Syrian families that have moved in, whenever there's change, whenever there is big change, which this obviously was for so many families, there are going to be issues. And there were issues in Crescent Valley, and I'm sure there continue to be. But what we saw in that neighborhood in particular was a community police officer that just seized the opportunity and became so engaged with those residents and other residents in that community that they were building friendships that didn't exist. They were building engagement that had never been seen there before to that level, because now the community is really supporting each other in a positive way. There are always going to be issues, don't get me wrong. But we were able to demonstrate to a culture that typically doesn't, I don't want to use the right language, but it treats women a little differently than we do as Canadians. And they were forced to deal with a female police officer. That was a big lesson for that community, and a successful lesson. And those are the things that we cannot lose sight of. Our neighborhoods are very vulnerable. We're dealing with extreme levels of poverty, child poverty, health is a big issue in our neighborhoods. But I mean, in my own neighborhood, well, Crescent Valley and the Old North End, we're dealing with like 75% roughly, if you combine both, 75% child poverty rate. Those numbers are scandalous. And we cannot walk away from this. We know that our community police officers have been working so closely with our youth, the DARE program, and also engaged with youth in such a positive way, that our kids at our center, they're still asking, where's Constable James? Where's Constable James? He's not around anymore. And I don't know what to tell them. I explained that the policing program has been cut. We're trying to get it back in place. But those are the kids that we need to be engaged with. Those are the kids whose lives we need to change now so that we don't go back down that road where we're dealing with such extreme levels of crime. Proof is in the pudding. 23.3% crime rate decrease in the priority neighborhoods. The Old North End went from the highest crime rate in the city down to the lowest. That just doesn't happen. That's about true engagement from community policing and community working together. I did speak about the arrival of newcomer families. We've also seen lots of big changes in our neighborhood made possible just by the support of officers. These are the types of things that we're seeing. I've seen, I post pictures all the time, but on our Facebook page. Just last year, I remember posting one of our community police officer pushing a car that broke down in the middle of the street a block. He just did it. He just got out of his car, helped someone. And that's the type of relationship that we've seen develop in our neighborhood. We do a Christmas dinner at our center every year. We've had community police officers show up at that Christmas dinner and have dinner with residents. So, that's the level of engagement, and that's the type of police officer we see in our neighborhoods, and that's something we should be emulating everywhere. Previous to my work at One Change, I coordinated Vibrant Community St. John, which governed the poverty reduction strategy prior to Living SJ. At a national level, I cannot tell you how many times the policing program in St. John is held up because of the level of commitment that we've seen from community police, from our city, and because of the remarkable change that has taken place because of the community policing program. We cannot lose this. We are going down that rabbit hole again, and we cannot do that to our neighborhoods. We cannot do that to our city, and we cannot do that to our children. Our ask to you is to reinstate the community policing program, and not just reinstate it, but we'd like the terms to be extended to 5 years. We also know we're giving you anecdotal evidence of what has happened in our neighborhood. We need to be more careful about how we measure our successes. That's what we need to do. The evidence exists. Policing do a good job of measuring crime rates, but we need to start gathering some of that anecdotal evidence. We need to start showing the community the impact in a very real way that community policing has in our neighborhoods. And we need to do that soon. So we would like to have a robust evaluation program in place. And we also feel that we'd like to see an advisory team for community policing that is composed of community stakeholders, residents, and police management. That's our ask of you. We want to thank you for the years of service that the community police has done for us in our neighborhoods. And we really want to encourage you to look hard at this and find a way of reinstating this in our neighborhoods. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any questions or...
Very. I've been around this for a while. I was there at the first meeting in 2002 at Main Street Baptist Church. How much of the community police officer now, how important is the ability to arrest that a police officer has in their role as a community police officer?
The ability to arrest.
Well, and I guess I'll give you a little broader scope, because certainly I've been spending a lot of time knowing the budget we have and being very invested in this, of how we can continue to provide
Presence.
the service. If it's not the person, how do we help provide the service or a similar service or maybe a better service? So it's given me an opportunity to rethink things. And going back to 2002, we didn't have a community police officer till, well, Tanya, it was you. When was that?
I think 2003.
Okay, so
Tanya, you're the
So-
person who was the first police officer at one change.
Yeah.
I've heard your name many times.
There you go.
this is the famous Tanya LeBlanc.
There you go.
Everyone talks about you. I used to bring your child.
So, and I guess the reason I bring that up is, in that first year, period of time, we didn't even know we would have a person there, but Chief Cogswell at the time brought a bunch of cops in and played basketball against the kids, and they started to build a relationship. I remember Mary Gallatley, one of our officers, saying, it was interesting, the week afterwards, they were waving at her when she drove with all the fingers on her hand. Right? So I guess there are ways to make sure that relationship between the police and the communities exists.
Yeah.
We gave Sean Rocca an award here a few months back, and Sean, back in the day, was just on the North End Patrol. He wasn't officially a community. He would come to meetings when he can. He helped us organize auctions. He would be there with the kids. So there are ways to build those relationships. So that gets to how much is that arresting power? Like,
I think it is important.
Yeah.
Because there's a level of respect that goes along with that. But I think what we have seen that is probably even more important is that the police officers who are responding to calls, like when they're getting called, and I mean, I should say, when we have our community police officers in our neighborhood, that doesn't mean they're at the center all the time. They're out doing other work,
Yeah.
but they respond quite quickly. But what they are seeing is that when they're going out making calls, they're saying, this is not what we should be doing. We need a social worker here. Like that's the response that needs to take place. And I think that what we are asking
kind
is
of like
to
that,
have
sorry,
a
the
committee.
triage of it.
Yeah, but I think that without that influence, because I think we all say the same things and there are limited resources for everything, but I think that if we all came together as part of this advisory group, we could look at where the gaps are and we could advocate together for other dollars to address these gaps. I mean, I don't know, I can't speak for Living SJ, but is this something that we could look at through Living SJ to enhance, like to have a social worker to test this model out? But there are lots of ways to look at this. I just do not want to see what has been achieved in St. John deteriorate. And it is going to, and I mean, I think we are already seeing it firsthand in my neighborhood.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I guess just a comment as I was sort of, my brain was in the same spot there as the counselors, and there's discussion in terms of the dollars and cents of community policing as we knew it. That's one discussion. Don't have a solution for that tonight, but that's one discussion. And then my brain was trying to pull apart those other pieces and who else can help fill the gaps, and then I wrote down Living SJ, for example, as, so here we have a $2 million per year for 5-year poverty reduction innovation fund. And is there a way to take some new approach that I don't have a design for tonight, but with all the expertise, in this room, is there a way, to get an application in there and teamed with social development and all the other groups to say, okay,
And the neighborhoods.
and some involvement, Chief, with the police still. There's still going to be patrol, I assume. There's still patrols, there's still calls being answered. So is there a hybrid piece, or is there something here that can be recreated? There's probably everyone in the room agrees the benefits of the program, but with the hand and the cards we have, how can we redeploy something or reimagine something and go to the well, if you will, the Living SJ pot and social development and all these other organizations to say, look, here's what we don't want to have happen, here's all the pluses and the benefits, and how do we get our creative minds together and see something. Again, I don't have the answers tonight, but how do we spend some time to try and innovate and find a way and find some solutions? And
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that the idea of a social worker and measuring the impact of the community policing program, I mean, I'm not part of this committee with Living St. John, but this certainly would fit the criteria that they've laid out. I mean, it's about evaluating our progress and testing new models. So I think that might be something that would be worthy of exploration. But that well's going to dry up soon, so I would suggest we do something fast.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you, everybody. What we will do, should Mary be our point, or Barry, or how do you want to? Okay. Okay.
I'm just the
Voice.
lead.
Well, thank you. We will be in touch with you then, Mary, in the next couple days. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay, too.
Yeah, no one ever stays for the months. Yeah.
Drive safe.
We have no committee reports. Number 7. Number 8, we don't have any consideration. I'm trying to fly through it.
And I'm sorry, John, I somehow lost where the I've got open session minutes, but is there an open session?
It's right at the bottom of your committee of the whole agenda.
I couldn't bring us to agenda kits.
I'm looking for the agenda in the package for the open session. I'm sure it's here. I just must have which number?
You're going to go to
9.1? Yeah,
So is it 2 separate emails? You open a separate email?
no, just one package, right? I have 9.1, which is the report, but I don't have an open session agenda.
There isn't one. It's on the bottom.
I gotcha. So it's all one agenda, but I get you saying. Okay.
The kit itself, so in the materials, is in one kit?
Correct.
Just keep
Here we
scrolling.
go.
I can't say, I don't know
Where are
why.
we at? I was talking to you last.
9.1.
You're in detention.
Now I'm looking. It was page 1. Couldn't have been that difficult for me.
Good night, Wanda.
Did you see me in the
I saw you.
I don't know that lady, but I'd like to get to know her. She seems like she's a
Yeah.
Up to go
She has
petite,
like
can we go?
400 she'd love that. She has like 400 hats. No joke. She's the best dressed woman I've ever seen. She's a hat for everything.
Oh, yeah.
She's as sweet as can be. She's doing it
100
for
cats,
you.
okay.
Yeah.
Last time I saw her, she had a red hat on, and I asked her if she was a red
Red
hat
hatter?
lady. She
Oh,
said,
yeah.
No.
Sorry.
No. All right. Committee reports, we have none. Item 8, we have no consideration issues, or, oh my gosh, we have nothing separate from the consent agenda, so moving on to 9.1, internal monthly reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Internal monthly report, there was one complaint against police filed in the month of January, 2 items of complimentary correspondence, which I believe you have seen, and no grievances.
Can we get a motion to
Receive and file.
Thank you. 9.2,
9.2, overtime.
oh, sorry, overtime and court time expense.
Right, and as is usual, I'll just turn that over to Marvin if he wants to speak to that.
This is 9.2, is that
Yep,
correct?
yep.
For the month of December, you're going to see that we're slightly over on the overtime expense compared to budget. And year-to-date, we're $150,000 over budget. And on page 2 is the court time. We're just slightly over for the month of December by $8,300.
And year-to-date, we're about $67,000 over budget. And this time around, you're going to see, compared to 2016, our overtime for criminal investigation, court time for criminal investigation is slightly above where we were trending previous year. If there's any questions, I certainly will try to answer them for you.
Can we get a motion to receive and file?
I will move that, please.
Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. 9.3, the overtime hours utilization report, Chief? To Marvin, I assume.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Again, this report is the utilization of budget overtime hours for 2017. For the month of December, we were 655 hours over what we allocated for the month. Year-to-date, we're 3,500 hours over budget, and compared to 2016, we're just slightly above that number at 3,200. If you look at page 2, this particular section of the report tells you about how we have to backfill 12-hour shifts. For the month of December, there was 89 shifts that were backfilled for a total of 1,071 hours. Monetary-wise, that's $66,000. Number of shifts year-to-date for 2017 is just over 500 shifts, and that's 675 hours. Compared to 2016, we're down about 43 shifts, and year-to-date, cost-wise for 2017 was $376,000. So we are down compared to last year, but you'll see in the month of December we have a number of hires. It gives back over 500 marks, and we thought we were going to be in 400 range.
So Marvin, a quick question for you. So if you look at that 2017 totals, and if you, I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around this, but so if you had a constable works a couple thousand hours, is that what it is, 2080 or?
2080 is what they're
Yeah.
for.
So is it that direct a correlation that if we had one more person, it would take that 6,075 number down? But no, it doesn't.
No.
It's not a direct.
No, it doesn't work that way. I mean, certainly, in the past, when we looked at these numbers, we always thought it had roughly 3 or 4 constables extra on shift on that platoon that would help you address the overtime.
Yeah.
Again, back to letter agreement number 9, by having us to manage the time off. We hope to get what we're seeing here get corrected by that letter agreement number 9. And I would think we did our calculations, Chief, when we went to negotiations. We probably anticipated a conservative $200,000 saving if we got these concessions.
Per year.
Per year, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's saving in our costs. So if everything plays out this year on the letter agreement number 9, we shouldn't see the number of hires that we've experienced in the last probably 5 years.
Yeah. Difficulty is we missed the mark. So a lot of vacation time was picked, and with the people being moved back, some of which we haven't moved back yet because they're involved in special projects, but those will be wrapping up. But so vacation times were picked, and there will be some challenges even with letter of number 9 for 18, just to fully administer this thing as nice as well as it would have been. I think if we'd had the opportunity would have been there had this been settled before December 31st, but it wasn't, and that's that. So
So it's lost for the year, is that what we're saying, or just some?
No,
some of this.
Some.
One of the things, the chief is later, we started our block training. These are things that we have to train in every year, use of force, first aid, these things are mandatory on the police act that they train. So that's a 3-day training schedule that started the first week in January, which is our high period where we have no vacation and lots of people on, so we can take them off the platoons and put them in training class. Less of a chance for overtime. However, with the new letter of agreement, it allows us to schedule that training without impacting on the number of people that are off. When that training started this time, for the first 3 weeks, we didn't have that 3-person slot. Now that the training's up and running, we're trying to introduce that. But again, we're trying to play catch-up, you know, if people have made plans, the original intent was that you come in when you selected your vacation, you'd select those 3-day training blocks, so they have to be all plugged into the system before you even had your time off. So unfortunately, they get in with their time off before the contract is signed. But we're playing catch-up, but we're still making gains. I don't know what that's going to be at the end of the day, but we're still working on it digitally.
Thank you.
It's a good thing.
Can we get a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
And can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconder? Thank you.